Hello, my name is Billy James, and this is the daily life of an Italian Renaissance peasant. While definitely not the worst time to be a peasant, the Renaissance had little impact on the life of a peasant. Peasants did what they always do. They were simple laborers, doing mostly agricultural jobs on oftentimes land they didn't own. But unlike some peasants of the past, Renaissance peasants got wages and had a decent amount of days off in the year. Sleep. Most peasants would sleep on the floor, and the ones that didn't would sleep on beds called palliasses, which which are simple burlap sacks full of straw. Not too comfortable, but anything beats sleeping on the cold, hard floor. Peasants often didn't have time to sleep late into the day, and would often wake up early to tend to livestock. This is why peasants of the time would sleep biastically, which just means they had a short rest in the middle of the day. This was used to try to catch up on lost sleep during hard 12-hour workdays. Food. Peasants ate mostly bread and vegetables, washing that down with wine. The bread was often rye or made with barley, and the vegetables were mostly leafy greens like spinach. Peasants ate breakfast when they woke up, and then had a lunch called midday dinner. Once the day was over, they would eat again, calling that supper. Hygiene. Cleanliness was important during the Italian Renaissance, and unlike most peasants before them, Renaissance peasants would bathe sometimes, mostly in nearby rivers, and would use soap, which was readily available at the time. For waste management, most peasant communities had outhouses, or some peasants had chamber pots, which are large vase-like buckets used for pooping. Clothing. Peasants often only owned one outfit, and as such they were fans of layering their clothing when it got cold. Most peasants also wore hats to block heat from the sun. Peasant clothing was made of heavy fabrics like wool and flax, and was often not dyed, unlike most aristocrats' clothing. Housing. Peasant housing was generally modest and made from local material like wood, thatch, and stone. Houses were small, often with just one or two rooms, and lacked many of the comforts that the nobility enjoyed, like furniture and uncramped living conditions. Work. Peasants worked mostly agricultural jobs and worked hard 12-hour days. Many peasants worked on land owned by aristocrats, but they would get wages that allowed them to buy things like soap and candles, something peasants of the past did not have. Some would even buy their own farms. Limited education. Education was not a priority for peasants during the time. Most peasants were illiterate, simply having no time to allocate to such luxuries as learning and reading how to write. Their time was taken up by work, and any spare moments were spent doing necessary tasks like sleeping and eating. The peasants that did go to school went to dame schools, which taught the alphabet and how to do simple chores. Overall, peasants had it rough, but not as bad as many other peasants over the years. They still worked hard days on land they didn't own, but at least this time they got paid. And honestly, anything beats the plague-filled last century.